We've got a charged atmosphere for two rivals in the East Division. It's the Moonshine Throwdown. Marshall and Western Kentucky.
Intercepted by Key, and Key has one man to beat. A nice cut move. Edwards can't get him. Key takes it all the way. A pick six for Devin Key.
Here comes Talik Keaton to the sideline midfield. He's to the 40, gets a block, and here's goal! Touchdown, Marshall!
So please join me in welcoming the 21st head coach in WKU football history, Tyson Helton.
And Marshall's going to finish the year 9-4 and champions of the 2018 Gasparilla Bowl, the sixth consecutive bowl win for the Marshall Thundering Herd.
Welcome back to the Moonshine Throwdown podcast, presented by Homefield Premium Vintage Collegiate Apparel, the perfect blend of comfort and style. Get yours at homefieldapparel.com and follow them on Twitter at homefieldapparel. Homefield Apparel, wear one for the team. Speaking of wearing one for the team, Trace, man, I don't know. Cincinnati came into the Joan C. Edwards Stadium and put one on the chin of Marshall. I know you've got some thoughts on that. UAB took a trip up to Bowling Green and, well, they played the first team that had any semblance of a team. That's no slight to Western, by the way. And UAB took the L. But before we get Steven in here, we're going to talk about this Cincinnati-Marshall game. We talked about how in all the polls and, and everywhere you look, these two teams looked very, very similar. And, well, I guess just to put it bluntly, boy, were we wrong, because Marshall got absolutely curb stomped at the hands of the Bearcats at home. And the Herd had 2 weeks to prepare. I mean, there's really nothing you can say positive about the effort that was put forth by the Herd. I went back and watched a little bit of the game, and I'm going to be honest with you. Now, some people will say, that's a bunch of BS, but I'm going to tell you, I was tipped off right at the beginning of how I thought this game was going to go for the Herd, and it wasn't because of Cincinnati going straight down the field and scoring on their opening possession. It was what happened after the Herd got the ball when the very first play from scrimmage, Taven Richardson was wide open for a no doubt 90-yard, what would have been a 90-yard touchdown reception, and Isaiah Green just blew it. I mean, he overthrew a wide open receiver, and I knew then that this was probably not going to be the Herd's day. But I'm going to let you talk about that, and then we'll talk about some stats, because I know you're fired up. I know you're feeling some kind of way, and I want you to be able to, express that, because I'm sure a lot of Herd fans are feeling the same way. So you can go ahead and cut loose, say what you want to, get the angst out, get the anger out. Go for it, man.
Yeah, I'm definitely feeling some type of way. You could say that. I want to start by saying I don't sugarcoat things. I'm not one of those people. But I'm not unfair with criticism either. I don't consider myself unfair or too harsh or whatever. So with that being said, this is probably one of the easily top 5 worst performances Marshall's ever had under Doc Holliday, without a doubt. And it's definitely the worst since the 2016 Western Kentucky debacle. And I would say, now this might be a hot take considering everything, but I actually think this was worse than that Western Kentucky game, because Marshall was 3-8 heading into that Western Kentucky game, and his season was over. They were horrible the whole year. It didn't mean a thing. And Western was obviously en route to a conference title. This is the 4th game of the year. Marshall's got momentum. They're at home in front of a big crowd. They're playing a good opponent, and they look like that. There's just absolutely no excuse to look as pathetic as Marshall did in this game. At home with a bye, coming off of a bye week, you come out of a bye week at home in front of what ended up being the 13th largest crowd in Joan C. Edwards Stadium history, mind you, at 32,000 plus, and you look that bad. That is unacceptable. There is no other way you can describe it. I don't care how you want to spin it. I don't care how much of a green-goggled homer you are. There is no way you can defend that performance. It was that bad. There's no excuse for it. And Marshall's it's gut check time, because if they don't figure it out soon, this fan base is already livid now. They're not. It's going to get worse and worse and uglier. So there's absolutely no excuse to look that bad, to lose by 38 points on your home field, given all those circumstances. I just can't fathom it. But yet here we are sitting at with a 52-14 loss. It happened nonetheless. So can't happen. Unacceptable, pathetic. You can come up with as many adjectives as you want, and they all fit this game perfectly.
Yeah, you can't have that. You can't. Marshall is a team that is supposed to be one of the finest in the conference, and to get outclassed is a word you did not use, but is absolutely an accurate statement. They got outclassed in every phase of the game and on the sidelines. You just can't have that. It's a poor represent. A loss is one thing. A 38-point loss to a team that was a 2.5-point favorite coming in. I mean, I don't know what happened. I mean, Marshall put the full court press on for a big game. They wanted a Kelly Green out. You know, we said in the preview they were pushing for the 30K plateau. They almost get 10% more than that 30K. So the crowd was there. And they laid an egg. I mean, if that's what you're going to do whenever you have a big game, then you need to stop hyping a big game. You just stop it. That's the type of thing that turns a fan base off. It'd be one thing if you lose in this terrible fashion and there's no hype around the game, but they get it hyped up and hype like it's going to be this epic shootout, and then it's not even close.
Well, real quick. I just wanted to say that's the thing that I said too during the game. How are you going to hype up these games like this when you get to 30,000 plus and get the Kelly Green out and get all that stuff? How are you going to hype that up and then look like that every time, basically? I mean, it's just, you can't do that. That's a big reason why the crowds have been pretty weak the last few years, because they know ultimately they're not going to get what they want. I mean, they know they're going to beat their Old Dominions and their Charlottes and whoever, but they know when they get a quality team like Cincinnati or NC State like last year, they know Marshall's going to lose. So, like, you can't have that. The fans are going to turn on you. That's why you're one of the reasons why you're not getting consistently good crowds every week. That's one of the reasons, because they know you just can't buy into it.
Yeah. I heard a stat. I can't remember when it was. It wasn't that long ago. I can't remember which game I was watching. It was here recently. And they were talking about that home winning percentage at Jones C. Edwards Stadium and how Marshall is very, very stingy. And, that's a historical record, because the point was made, and this is the stat I want to talk about. The stat was made by one of the broadcasters. I wish I could remember which game it was. They said Marshall has lost at least 2 games at home in the last 3 seasons. So that tells you right there, that's a huge chink in the armor. The home field advantage that Marshall likes to hang its hat on isn't as strong as it once was. Nope. And I don't know why. The crowds are there. They stay energized for the most part. You can't say they're playing in an empty stadium or, there's just no juice flowing or nothing like that, because there is. They're just not bringing it at home like they used to bring it at home, So let's talk about some stats, and then I'm sure you got some more thoughts. Those 4 indicators, Trace, total yards, time of possession, first downs, and turnovers. It is what they indicated the outcome of this game like you thought they would, except for you would have thought it would have been, a little bit closer. These stats weren't as lopsided as you might think. Yes, total yardage 525 to 256. Cincinnati basically, they more than double up the herd. Time of possession 37 minutes 8 seconds to 22:52 in favor of the Bearcats. First downs 29-14, also doubled up. And turnovers, Marshall actually wins the turnover battle. They did not turn the ball over, and they get a fumble from Cincinnati. So to give up 52 points to your opponent and not turn the ball over. That tells you something right there. That is really a telling stat. I mean, the big takeaways from this game, 28-0 at halftime. Ultimately, it's 45-0 before Sheldon Evans gets a 13-yard touchdown run with 12 minutes and 35 seconds left in the fourth quarter. Now, the Herd does, tack on another touchdown after that Cincinnati fumble. Willie Johnson takes it in around and goes 40 yards. But, hey, Cincinnati's not done at that point. They go down the field and score another touchdown, with under 2 minutes to go in the game. So, call it what you will. Luke Fickell and his squad had a game plan, and it worked. Everything seemed to work for them. Ritter he lived up to the billing, had a great game. He was very mobile and elusive and gained yards in bunches. And the Herd did manage to get to him a couple times, but it ultimately, it was a non-issue. The couple of sacks that they were able to get did not really matter at all. Let's talk about offensive stats for the Herd. Isaiah Green, 11 of 29, 131 yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions, QBR of 10.2. Brendan Knox, leading rusher, 16 carries, 49 yards. Also the leading receiver, 4 receptions for 50 yards. Sheldon Evans, 7 attempts for 42 yards and that 1 touchdown. Corey Gamage, the leading wide receiver in the receiving corps, 2 catches, 28 yards. And Willie Johnson, probably the best, all-around game maybe. I don't know, 1 rush, 1 catch, 23 yards, 1 run, 40 yards, and that touchdown I mentioned. Defensively, a lot of guys got a lot of stats. Najee Johnson, the leading tackler, 13 tackles, 5 solo, and 1 half tackle for loss. Amari Cobb, 11 tackles, 2 of those solo, half a sack and half a tackle for loss. Brandon Drayton, 10 tackles, 1 solo. Tavante Beckett, another solid game. Really solid game. 9 tackles, 1 solo, 1 sack, 1.5 tackles for loss. Herd 4 guys with at least 9 tackles. Jiminy Christmas. One stat I got to throw at you, Trace, and then I want to get your take on some things, and then we'll do some grades. Isaiah Green. Not trying to pile on here, but we got to talk about it. He had a great game against VMI, and VMI's nothing. No offense to VMI, but they're not on the level of most FBS schools. No offense. Ohio, Isaiah Green did just enough to get the win. And yes, we mentioned ad nauseum his receivers let him down in that game. Could have had a bigger stat game, but against the 2 main out-of-conference opponents, Boise State and Cincinnati, Isaiah Green is a combined 21 of 46, total 187 yards passing and 1 interception.
Man.
Average quarterback rating in those 2 games, 12.
Oh.
You cannot have that and expect to win against any. These are Ohio. We use the term teams with a pulse, and Ohio had a pulse, but against the 2 marquee opponents in the out of conference, Isaiah Green had his worst 2 games, maybe of his career. So yeah. I don't know what's got to happen with Isaiah Green, but he's got to get it going, man. These type of efforts are not going to win very many games in conference. They might be able to blow past Old Dominion because Old Dominion's not very good. And, who knows if they can beat Charlotte. Charlotte can put up some points. They didn't against FAU so much today, but they can put up points. We've seen that. They put a bunch of points on Appy State. Western looks to be playing really well right now. If their defense keeps living and feasting, then who knows? But, what about that? What about that stat I just gave you about Isaiah Green? Because look, it all goes around the quarterback, man. It starts there. If you're not getting the play there, you're not going to win a lot of ball games, period. So 21 of 46, 187 yards, 1 interception in 2 games against the 2 best opponents you've played so far.
You just can't have it. There's nothing else you can say. That can't happen. And it's like I said, with the offense and him both, the consistency just isn't there. I remember I made a comment similar to, paraphrasing of course, but I said you can't go from scoring 7 points one week to 33 the next to 10 the next Well, they didn't score 10 this game. They scored 14. So it can't be that way. You have to have some type of consistency. Isaiah Green has to be more consistent. And I like him. It's not that I'm condemning the kid or anything, but like, you just cannot play that rough and expect to have a chance to beat quality teams like Cincinnati or Boise State. It just won't happen. So he has to grow up quick. I mean, yeah, he's a sophomore now. He's still young, but he's got a lot of playing time under his belt. So you can't go out there and look like that. I mean, there's no other way around it. You have to play better than that. The quarterback it will make or break you. And Isaiah Green twice this year has kind of helped break the Marshall offense. So it can't do it.
We're not here to, pile on, like we say, but we also can't say things like, well, he's just a sophomore, because he was co-freshman of the year last year in the conference. So he had a lot of momentum coming into this season. And he started out week 1 gangbusters. Of course, again, it's VMI, but whatever. That's the type of game you play to knock the rust off or to sharpen up for your better opponents. So every team does that if they have the ability to do it. And shocking to me is this game against Cincinnati. The Herd goes down 45-0, and they do not give Alex Thompson a shot to come in and spark the offense. And if you're going to sit back and tell me, well, you can't do that to your starting quarterback, you'll shatter his confidence, then I say to you, then I say to you, you need a tougher-minded starting quarterback, because he should be the first one to go, it's not my day. I'm not having a great day. I can understand why the coaches made the move.
Made no sense.
You can't pout about it if you're that thin-skinned, and I'm not saying Isaiah Green is. I'm just saying if the coaches decide to make the move, you would like to think that your starting quarterback goes, it's just not my day, man.
Yeah.
The team needs this. It's because it's about the team. And Green may have very well taken that move in stride and been cool with it. But it's more shocking to me that the coaches did not give Alex Thompson an opportunity to provide a spark for this offense. So let's talk about grades, Trace. I hate to laugh, but I don't even know that I need to go individually. I'm pretty sure they're all going to be pretty close to the same, but we'll do it anyway. How about some quarterbacking grades to get us kicked off here?
F. It was an F for the quarterback this week.
Yeah.
He was bad. 11 for 29. That's under 50%. That's bad. 131 yards. That's not very good. No touchdowns. At least he didn't turn a ball over, but not that it mattered. And then he just missed way too many passes. I mean, like you said, the very first offensive play of the game for Marshall, he misses what would have been an 88-yard touchdown. They were at their own 12. So that was the sign right there of how the game was going to go for him and the offense as a whole. So it was right there with Boise State bad as far as how he played. So, if you give it anything but an F or higher than an F, you're just being delusional, I think. So I hate to say it, but it was an F performance.
Yeah. And again, we're not making light of the situation. We're trying to be as fair and as honest as we can be. So this is not our time to just come on and be funny and pile on. If you come and listen to this podcast, you're coming to listen to, accurate and honest information. So this is not Trace trying to be funny. And if you think it's not an F performance, then, take the goggles off, quit drinking the Kool-Aid for a minute, and understand that it's okay for your team to be bad in situations. They just need to get better. And this is one of those situations where they were bad. So offensively as a whole, Trace?
Yep, another F. They really didn't score any points that actually mattered. I pretty much called the 2 touchdowns they scored just garbage. It was fourth quarter and the game was already over. So I don't even consider those really. They count, but I don't even really take them into consideration. For all the garbage points it was all in garbage time. 14 first downs while Cincinnati had 29. That's not going to cut it. 256 total yards isn't going to cut it. And then time of possession, they were about minus 15 in that. So that's not going to cut it. They were close to minus 20 in time of possession in the Boise State game, and they're about minus 15 in this game. That's just not giving your offense enough chance to score. That's not staying on the field long enough. Offense can't sustain any drives. That's keeping the defense on the field too long. So offense really, just when are they going to be consistent? I just cannot get over the fact that they still aren't consistent. They still have not found the rhythm and the mojo that they had with Rakeem Cato. Now, I understand he's a generational talent and he's their all-time greatest statistical quarterback. I'm not saying he's the best ever, but stats-wise he is. How hard – I mean, I understand it's hard to replace a guy, but that's been 5 years. How can you not have found something to be close to that level since then? So offense, another big, big dud, so it's got to be an F.
Yeah, you're right. And one thing I'm going to say with that is, to be fair, how long did Marshall go between Byron Leftwich graduating and then Rakeem Cato came along? So those quarterbacks are not just growing on trees. And if they are, they're not lining up to come to Marshall. No offense, Marshall. You know, they would rather go be the third string quarterback at Alabama or Clemson than, you know, come and start by and large at a place like Marshall, which is, you know, each kid to each his own, whatever. But yeah. Not very stellar offensively. Defensively, I mean, what can you say? You give up 525 yards, but Jiminy Christmas, they're on the field for almost 38 minutes. I mean, what do you expect? So defensively, what do you got?
Yeah, I mean, they were on the field too long, but I'm still giving them an F. This was not a good defensive performance at all. It was pretty putrid. I mean, they missed so many tackles. I wish I could see the stat on how many tackles they missed, because it was a lot. I mean, I feel like very few times they actually got their guys down on the first attempt, Cincinnati's guys on the first attempt. So when you give up 52 points, that pretty much says it all. You give up 525 total yards. Secondary play was the worst it's been all year by far. I mean, it was abysmal in secondary this week. 275 passing yards, 230 rushing yards. I mean, that's a lot of success Cincinnati's having it through the air and on the ground. You just cannot allow that. And Marshall's run defense that they hang their hat on really well, and they were so good last year against the run. They have been kind of gashed so far this year, which is kind of alarming because that's the strength of the defense, and it's not looking like the strength right now against these good teams. So defense was bad, so it's got to be another F.
Well, fair. Special teams?
Yeah, this is the highest grade, and it's not very high either. I'm going with a D for special teams. I mean, the kickoff and punt coverage, absolutely terrible. I mean, the first kickoff of the game, Cincinnati gets to the 40. That sets the tone for the whole game. Cincinnati goes down the field, scores, and with like 2 or 3 minutes off the clock. Kickoff and punt coverage, that's one of the things I said they needed to – that was one of my keys to victories. The kickoff coverage needed to be better. It wasn't better. It was probably the worst it's been all year. And then the kick return game, they're having no production there at all. They only average about 17 yards per kick return. I mean, they're just doing nothing in the kick return game. They need to figure something out there, help the offense in better field position. Now, the only reason I don't give special teams an F is because Robert Lefebvre had a really good day. He had 43.3 yards per punt, punted a lot, but he averaged over 43 yards a punt. And then Isaiah Green had a good pooch punt that pinned him inside I think it was about the 6-yard line or something like that. So punting was good, but other than that, special teams were pretty bad. So I've got to go with a D.
And as we move along, this is probably the one I've been waiting on because, well, how about the coaching grade, Trace?
F minus. You have a bye week. And you're at home in front of a good crowd, and that's what you look like. Unacceptable at any level of football. I don't care if it's middle school, high school, college, NFL, CFL, AFL. I don't care what it is. You cannot look like that out of a bye week. Absolutely pathetic. And the game plan offensively and defensively, I wasn't feeling it from the start, and it showed. Defense, I was texting with one of my friends during the game, and we said it's kind of looking like Chris Ripp on defense because they were playing 10 yards off the ball almost every play. But, it wasn't stopping anything. Cincinnati was still having success in the short to intermediate passes, and they were still burning them deep. So, the 10-yard cushions and whatever was not working whatsoever. Offensively, they didn't open up the playbook at all, really. They didn't get Xavier Gaines involved enough, which I think that was a lot of Cincinnati's defense playing well and taking him out of the game. But they were not very good offensively. The game plan, I thought, was pretty weak, both sides of the ball. I mean, you can't – out of a bye week like that and, all the situation, the 13th biggest crowd in stadium history, nice weather, home game, 2 weeks off, whatever, pathetic. you cannot condone it, and it's got to be an F-. I don't care what anybody says. That coaching performance is unacceptable.
Yeah, offensively, you got no excuses. You get Brendan Knox back. Defensively, you get Furman Silva back. And again, on the offense, Xavier Gaines, you mentioned him. He only shows up in the box score as the 5th leading receiver, 2 catches, 10 yards. That's it.
Nope.
So overall?
Yeah, overall F.
Yeah.
Not really much suspense about that. I mean, I don't see how any logical person that knows anything about football can give this any more than an F. I mean, what if you give it more than an F? I don't know what you're seeing, because I mean, every facet of the game was pretty horrible in this game. I mean, the best thing was the punting. So that pretty much says how the day went. If your punter is the best thing you have on the, through the course of a game. I mean, you just can't say it enough. It's unacceptable. You can't have it. It cannot happen again like that. There's just no excuse in the world to look that bad. Now, I understand Cincinnati had a bye week to prepare as well, but they were the freaking road team. And Marshall's at home. Marshall should have the decided advantage as far as preparation and game day and everything. There should be no doubt about it. So overall, it's an F if I've ever seen one.
Yeah. I mean, there's nothing more to say. This is one that but the Herd took on the chin. They got punched and they did not really fight back until it was way, way too late. They couldn't get anything going. So it's best just to take this L and drink your sorrows away this evening and hope for a better result. And we're not going to preview we're not going to get into the preview right this second, but Middle Tennessee, Herd opens with Middle Tennessee in Conference USA play in Murfreesboro, a place where Marshall has historically played horribly. So it could not get any better for the Herd right now. They're going to have to figure something out. Now, Middle Tennessee is 1-3 on the year, but those are 3 losses to 3 Power 5 teams, 2 of those ranked in the top 15. So I don't know what that says about Middle Tennessee, but if anything, they're battle tested. I mean, it might be a pretty good 1-3 if there is such a thing. But the Herd better get it right, and they better get it right quick, because now the games mean something. And if you start losing Conference USA games, the season's going to spiral downward really, really quickly. So on that note, let's get Steven in here and let's talk about UAB coming to Bowling Green. Defending Conference USA champions, man, rolling in as a 3-point favorite. They really thought they were somebody with that 3-0 record. And we talked about, well, we didn't. I talked about it in the preview. They hadn't played anybody. And, I tweeted after the game that the Blazers lost the first game that they played to a team with a pulse. And I know that some people might take that as a slight to Western, but it's not. I mean, Western's the first good team that UAB has actually played in comparison to who they'd already played. And they lost, bro. 20-13. UAB goes down. Western Kentucky sitting all alone atop the Conference USA standings at 2-0, 2-2 on the season. I don't know what else to say, man. This was just an unbelievably awesome defensive effort by the Western Kentucky Hilltopper defense. This defensive line just keeps proving beyond a shadow of a doubt that they are quite possibly the top defensive line in Conference USA. I even heard the broadcasters say what we continue to keep saying every week, that they are living in the backfield of the opponent. Toppers forced 4 interceptions from Johnston III, and he could have had way, way more. Toppers like to, I guess, try to catch balls with their face mask. That really doesn't work too well, Steve. But he could have had 7 interceptions. It was not a pretty game. So let's talk about that game. Steve was there, fresh home from the excited crowd in Bowling Green, Kentucky. So let's talk about UAB taking that L and being dethroned currently as conference champions.
Yeah, man. The old saying is, to be the man, you got to beat the man.
Woo!
Guess what? No, but for real though, they, like you said, they came in with kind of a weak, strength of schedule. like we both said, you've said, I've said, everybody in Conference USA said they haven't really played anybody with a pulse. Defending champions or not, they may be a little overrated. I expected a little bit more from them. Our guys came out, did what they do. Awesome defensive performance. That performance will win a lot of games. Offensively, some things that could have been better, but as the game progressed, we started to settle in, started clicking with receivers, started putting some drives together. Unfortunately, like Helton said in his post, there was some situational football kind of kept backing us up and stopping us from padding the scoreboard and making it a comfortable margin, coasting to victory. We kind of had to grind it out the entire way. But overall, I mean, you got to be with 2-0 in conference after we start off with a disappointing loss to UCA. No matter what we do at this point in the season, everybody keeps pointing back to game number one. Yes, we lost to an FCS school for the second year in a row, Trace. But that has nothing to do with the conference standings.
Hey, get your mans who said you all were back, though. Get your mans on that one, okay?
Look, everybody,
good victory.
Everybody is going to go back to Central Arkansas until A, you win the East or win a title, or B, stop losing to FCS schools. Until one of those two things happen, people are going to continue to go back to that. But you're right. It has absolutely no bearing on the conference standings because those are the games that matter. So let's talk a little bit more in depth about UAB. Let's talk about those 4 indicators for this game. And it's one of those weird games that if you just looked at those 4 things, you might not think that the game ended the way it did. Total yardage, UAB 298, Western 222. Toppers get outgained. Time of possession, 32 minutes, 45 seconds. UAB, 27 minutes, 15 seconds. Toppers get outpossessed. First downs, 20-14. UAB has more first downs. Then the great equalizer rears its head. 4 turnovers for UAB, only 1 for Western. Western goes +3 in the turnover game. And, say what you will. I said it before. Toppers got 4 turnovers. All 4 were interceptions coming at the hands of 3 different players. They were feasting off the defense. Now, look, they could have easily had 7 interceptions. Johnston was throwing the ball up to be intercepted. It's just some of them were dropped. Again, this Topper defensive line is proving that they're one of the finest, if not the finest, to this point in the conference. And I think that the defensive end combo of D'Angelo Malone, Juwan Jones is probably the premier duo in the conference right now. If you have a disagreement with that, I don't know what to tell you because these guys are just awesome. Offensive leaders, Ty Story, you said he pieced together a pretty good game. 15 out of 24, 189 yards through the air and 2 touchdowns. 13 carries for 26 yards. He's the leading rusher on the ground yardage-wise. Gage Walker, as far as running backs goes, is the leading rusher there. 12 carries, 19 yards. Ja'Cour Pearson, 5 catches, 94 yards and a touchdown. Lucky Jackson, 3 catches for 44 yards. Defensively, I circled 3 guys. Devin Key, 12 tackles, 5 of those solo. D'Angelo Malone, 10 tackles, 6 solo, 2 sacks, 3 tackles for loss. And Kyle Bailey. How about Kyle Bailey having a great game? 7 tackles, 4 solo, 1.5 tackles for loss, and 2 interceptions. And then rarely do this, but we got to mention special teams because this was such a low-scoring affair. Corey Munson, 2 of 2 on field goals, 2 of 2 on extra points. The freshman kicker continues to dazzle for the Hilltoppers this season. So, Steve, look, you mentioned penalties pushing you back, keeping you from being able to inflate the scoreboard a little bit, but I'm going to say one thing about this game. It's not necessarily negative, but you will agree with me. There is no way you can force 4 turnovers in a game and only win by 7 points. That's not going to happen. If that continues to happen, a lot of those games may not be wins. So the penalties be damned. Getting 4 turnovers has got to translate to more points on the scoreboard. You know that. I know that. Everybody in Hilltopper Nation knows that. But that's basically the only negative you can say about this game, is that you didn't get enough more points off turnovers. Everything else was pretty darn good. So let's talk about some grades then for this great Hilltopper dub at home. Quarterback play in Ty Story's first inaugural Hilltopper start. What do you got a grade for Mr. Story?
Yeah, I'm going to give Story. I mean, for the most part, he put them in position to be successful. We mentioned the penalties. There were a couple holding calls that negated a couple big plays, pushed them back. I don't put that on any fault on his shoulders. Kind of started out rough with some incompletion, some ball placement, but then as the game got going, he really got settled in and started moving the ball down the field, really finding his receivers and keeping drives alive. But like you said, in conference, once we get in conference play into the meat of it, it's going to take more than 20, 21, 24 points to win ball games. We said that against UCA. We said that after FIU. But right now we can afford to lean on the defense. But I think maybe we saw step one of the offense starting to grow. Like I said in a previous episode, I had kind of been curious what Story could do. I wasn't disappointed with what he can do. He seemed like a tough guy, and I think he earned a B-. As he gets more comfortable, I can see more good football ahead of it in conference play for sure.
Yeah, we talked about him playing in a lot of big games, a lot of tough football coming out of the SEC, and that there probably wasn't going to be a moment too big for him in this game. And he led them down the field to take the lead late in the game. So that just proves that Ty Story's ready and capable to lead this Hilltopper team. So how about offensively as a whole, Steve?
Yeah, offensively, really kind of surprisingly, the offensive line was kind of the only sore spot. Again, we mentioned a few penalties that kind of kept them behind the chains instead of in front of the chains, put them in not bad field position, but not great field position that they had set themselves up for. So offensively, I saw a step taken in the right direction. I think we see a new wide receiver kind of coming to the head as kind of wide receiver one. That had kind of been Lucky Jackson coming into the season. But I think Ja'Cour Pearson is starting to assert himself as that kind of go-to guy. And offensively, I was pleased, even though it wasn't a lot of points. I think there was progress and a B- for those guys.
Yeah, I think you're right. Ja'Cour Pearson's proven to be a real yards after the catch type threat. Not necessarily the outside guy that's just going to make that run the seam, but he's feasting across the field and in the Yaks department. So good on you for Ja'Cour Pearson coming on strong here in 2019. How about defensively? I mean, what a gem by this Hilltopper defense this week against UAB.
Yeah, I mean, defensively, it's got to be an A+. I mean, once again, getting hits in the quarterback, living in the backfield. Johnston III was hobbling around early in the game, so he was uncomfortable. His passes and his demeanor, his overall play kind of just showed that he wasn't comfortable. He had Hilltoppers in his face hitting him. The most of those interceptions, I think 3 of the 4 were just great defensive plays. The one to Darvin was just kind of a get rid of the ball as quick as you can, and Darvin was in the right place on that screen attempt. So good takeaways. We needed those. We hadn't had them all season, and definitely their best performance so far today. FIU was a good performance. This was a great performance that definitely earned them a game ball in my eyes. So definitely an A+ for the defense.
Yeah, a couple of guys I got to shout out, other than the guys that we mentioned, given the stat line. Number 1, Jeremy Darvin, the big man INT. What a play. Congrats to Jeremy Darvin, the big defensive lineman, coming up with an interception in this game. And number 2, Wow, how about the heat-seeking missile, Coco Darden, flat out blistering Spencer Brown on that play for a 4-yard loss, sent Brown out of the game. Hilltoppers successfully have now exited a starter from the opposition early in the game every week so far. So these guys are legit headhunters, and they come to lay the lumber. So shout out Jeremy Darvin on that INT. Shout out Coco Darden. Big play, putting the lick on Spencer Brown. Special teams, Steve, another solid performance from your kicker. And Haggerty, another solid performance punting.
Yeah, I mean, like we mentioned earlier, Munson, solid on field goals and extra points. And then Haggerty, had 2 balls. One that was, it crossed the goal plane. Clayton Bush had tipped it back, and it was on the inside the 1-yard line. They called it a touchback, though, and that was the right call. And then his very next punt, put a backspin on it, bounced it inside the 5, and I think we were around the 5-6 yard line that Haggerty pinned him. So, he's had a good performance. There was no gaffes, no errors, no muffed kick punts or anything like that. So, overall great performance. Special teams has to get an A. They deserved it.
Yeah, I would say so. Coaching as a whole?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to give me anything other than an A. I mean, there's some penalties that can be cleaned up. Helton made no qualms about that. In the press conference after the game, he spoke pretty kind of off the cuff there and just called it what it is. We had some opportunities to get better and clean up some execution and some situational football that put us in bad positions. But I like him being very, open and, calling it what it is, what we all saw. But I think overall they called a good game. They saw that they were stuffing our running back up the middle, so they had a lot of design runs for the quarterback, which allowed for the running back to be an extra blocker, which opened up some plays. And then the middle field was open for a lot of quick hit passes. So I think they called a good game defensively. Clayton White dialed up pressure. The back end stayed honest and disciplined and, for the most part made good plays. I think there was one down the field penalty on a PI that might have saved a touchdown. So it's an A. I mean, those guys played an awesome game, and if they keep playing those games, I think we're going to see a surprising turnaround to this season.
Yeah. At this point in the season, Western's got to be a surprise team for a lot of people. Not so much us, but I don't think anybody would have had Western 2-0 in the conference sitting alone at the top right now at this stage in the season. So I'm sure they're surprising some people. Overall, though, this has got to garner a high grade for you. I mean, Jiminy Christmas. It's just a good win, a tough win. Even though it's only a 7-point win, a win's a win, and this is the defending conference champion. So, got to be a good overall grade.
Yeah, I'm going to give him an A. I mean, it wasn't the greatest and smoothest offensive performance, but again, it was quarterback's first start with the program, still building a rapport with the offensive line and the receivers, I'm sure, under the game lights. I think as that second half got to rolling, we started to see that clicking and coming together. Coming up with ODU next, I expect to see that to continue. And I'm not going to be surprised if that preview is a big surprising score prediction of a win for us. Right now I'm riding high, admittedly, but I think ODU's not that great a team, and I think Western is taking steps in the right direction on both sides of the ball.
Yeah, of course we'll get to that preview here shortly. But always weird games when Western and Old Dominion lock horns. I mean, over the years, it's been, if it hasn't been scuffles and fights, it's been untimed downs that have, just games, things and scenarios that happen that it's one of those things you're just like, if I watched football for 1,000 years, I'd never see that again. It always seems to happen against when Western and Old Dominion play one another. So that'll be a pretty interesting, preview. I'm looking forward to some of the things you've got to say about that. But right now at this stage in the season, Marshall's kind of treading water, and Western's starting to climb the hill a little bit. So I tweeted a little bit ago that, each week now the Moonshine Throwdown looks to be a saucier and saucier matchup. And, if Marshall goes on a little tear here and Western continues their tear through conference, you could be looking at a 4-0 in Conference Western and a 3-0 in Conference Marshall when they hook up for the Moonshine Throwdown on 10/26 in Huntington. And first place in the East could be on the line, especially a tiebreaker right there. So, this is one that at the beginning of the season, a lot of people might have thought, wow, this is not really an intriguing game. One team is getting all the pub and the other one's looking for a bounce back year. And right now at this stage, it's looking even, if not tipping in the favor of Western a little bit right now, because the momentum is definitely on the side of the Big Red squad from Bowling Green. Hang with us on the other side of this break. We're going to preview this week's games. The Herd is traveling up to Murfreesboro, Tennessee to take on the Blue Raiders, and the Toppers are going to Norfolk to take on Old Dominion in a game that is certain to be weird and wild, keeping on pace with every other seeming Western and Old Dominion game. So hang with us. It's the Moonshine Throwdown podcast.
Pressure here for Urzua. Hit as he throws, is picked off. Interception made by Artis Johnson, and Johnson will march in for the Marshall touchdown. Ty Tyler hit the quarterback, and Johnson will benefit.
This is what the Blue Raiders couldn't afford to have happen, and these are really good pass rushers up front.
Welcome back to the Moonshine Throwdown podcast. A little bit of a format switch up this week if you guys haven't figured it out. We started the first half of the show with both wrap-ups from the weekend, and now we're going to do the previews instead of going team by team this week. We're going to see how that works out. So Trace is back with me. We're going to preview Marshall's trip up to Murfreesboro, or I guess down to, or west to, I don't know, Murfreesboro, Tennessee, to take on the Blue Raiders. Currently sitting 1-3 on the season. Haven't played a conference game yet. A little bit of a misleading 1-3. You really don't know how good Middle Tennessee is or how bad they are. We'll get to that in a second. Power Index likes the Herd, Trace. 61.3% chance to win on the road. Herd currently setting -5. So Middle Tennessee is a home dog this week against the Herd, despite that really, really rough effort that the Herd just put forth against Cincinnati. Like I said before, Middle Tennessee 1-3 on the season. Their only win so far is against Tennessee State. But those losses, now, you call them impressive if you want to. I mean, no loss is impressive, but the resume of teams that they've lost to, they didn't take their out-of-conference schedule lightly. Losses to Michigan, to Duke, and to Iowa. So losses to 2 top 15 teams, 3 Power 5 teams. Now, the combined score in those games, 129 to just 42 for Middle Tennessee. I guess you could say that the Raiders are battle-tested, if you want to put a positive spin on that. I doubt they'll play anybody in Conference USA tougher than Iowa, who's currently undefeated right now. All-time series, the Herd and the Blue Raiders is 5-3 in favor of the Herd, but in the Conference USA era of things, it's split even, 3-3. Series bragging rights are on the line this season in Murfreesboro. Marshall only has 1 win in Murfreesboro in the series, and that was in 2017. Pretty handily win, 38-10. The Raiders did, though, repay the favor and get their first win in Huntington last season. That 34-24 win that ultimately is what kept Marshall from playing or representing the East in the Conference USA Championship game. Of course, that was Isaiah Green had got knocked out of the game previous week against Western Kentucky, and that was Alex Thompson's first start in well over a year and a half of football. So there was a lot of rust that needed knocked off for the Herd, and it just came at a bad time. But it is what it is. The Raiders got the win, and the Raiders, of course, went on to represent the East in the Conference USA title game, losing by a 12-man on the field penalty. Love to throw that in there anytime I can. What a way to go. Now, of course, one last note on that game. That 34-24 victory, that 10-point win was Middle Tennessee's largest margin of victory in the entire series, dating back to whenever they first played, not just the Conference USA era. So these games are generally tight when they're in Murfreesboro, with the exception of that 38-10 win in 2017 for the Herd. They're generally pretty tight, generally settled by less than a touchdown, sometimes less than a field goal. And generally the vice versa. It's usually a blowout type win for the Herd when they play in Huntington, with the exception of last year's loss. On the season, the Herd is scoring about a touchdown better. Really, it's about 5.5 points better than Middle Tennessee. Herd currently averaging 28 or 27.5 points a game. Middle Tennessee just under 22. But like I said, 3 Power 5 teams, 2 top 15 teams, and they were shut out once. So a little bit of a misleading stat there. Looks like the Middle Tennessee this season, Trace, is a little bit similar to the Middle Tennessee that we've come to know in the past. They're a little bit more pass heavy than run heavy this year. If you haven't dove into the stats very much, roughly 100 yards passing per game more than rushing. And defensively, they're giving up over 500 yards a game. But again, the combined record in those losses, 10-2 to those opponents. So quality opponents they're losing to. I know I'm going to keep yammering on for a second, but like I said pre-show, I want to talk about these players to look out for, because I think that's going to have an effect on how you might view the game if you haven't looked at them already. So let's get right into that. Generally, we always say it starts with the quarterback, and boy, does it ever with Middle Tennessee. It doesn't just start with the quarterback. It almost also ends with the quarterback, because he looks like he's going to be trouble maybe for the Herd, given what we've seen these first few weeks of the season. Quarterback Asher O'Hara, the 6', 190-pound sophomore, 78 out of 111 on the season, 895 yards, 8 touchdowns, just 2 interceptions, Trace. That's 70% completion percentage. And to make matters worse, he's the team's leading rusher. 52 carries, 235 yards, and a touchdown on the ground. He's averaging 4.5 yards a carry against those defenses that we just mentioned. Looks like he may be a problem for the Herd. Running back Chatton Mobley, the 6'1", 233-pound sophomore, just 20 carries on the season, 114 yards, 2 touchdowns, but good enough for 5.7 yards per carry. A couple of wide receivers we're going to mention. Jaron Price, the 5'11", 184-pound junior, 16 catches on the season, 171 yards, 2 touchdowns, good for 10.7 yards a catch. And, of course, wide receiver Ty Lee. Everybody knows about Ty Lee, the 5'9", 186-pound senior, 14 catches, 151 yards, just 1 touchdown so far, good enough for 10.8 yards a carry or per catch. Now, one guy I got to mention defensively, because he's kind of their do-it-all. And that's safety Reed Blankenship, 6'1", 196-pound junior, 33 tackles on the season, 22 of those solo. He's got a forced fumble, 2 picks, and a pass defended. Now, this is a guy that has been doing it for several years now. In 2018, he racked up 107 tackles on the season. So this is not a new type breakout season for Reed Blankenship. He's one you better have the circle around when you're defensively game planning. So given what I just told you, Trace, given what we know about the Herd and their defensive woes against mobile quarterbacks, I'm doubting that you think a quarterback leading his team in passing and rushing is the recipe for success for the Herd this week. So talk to me about Middle Tennessee and your feelings on the game.
Well, yeah, I was unaware of those stats, but that looks like a definite question mark for the Herd's defense heading into this game, especially reeling off of a terrible performance against Cincinnati. And then, like, even against Ohio, like, Nathan Rourke had a lot of success against that Herd defense. He was the first 100-yard rusher on Marshall's defense in 2 seasons. And then the last week with Ritter and all those guys, they ran for 200-plus yards. So, like, and then, of course, the secondary got shredded against Cincinnati as well. So, like, that's definitely a cause for concern there, especially on the road where Marshall historically struggles at Middle Tennessee. I mean, the only good performance they've ever had there was 2017 when they really just beat the brakes off of them that year. Like, that was really the outlier. I feel like most games with them don't go that way, but it was a really impressive win. But no, that was most of the time when they play there, they struggle. Like, for example, 2013, they lost on a walk-off touchdown at the very end, 51-49. 2015, they lost the game in, I think it was 3 overtimes, where they missed 5 field goals. So, that's pretty rough. So in 2017, like I said, they blew them out that year, but most times they struggle. So it could be another struggle this year. I mean, Middle Tennessee, is there a team that plays more payday games than Middle Tennessee? Because
there couldn't be.
I don't think there is. I mean, I was just looking back at the list, some of the games they played the last 5 years, and it's insane. They played Minnesota, they played Alabama, Illinois, Vanderbilt. Let's see who else. Syracuse, Georgia, Michigan. I mean, are you kidding me? That's all within 5 years. Like they schedule those payday games hard. And usually what happens is they start 1-3 or so out of conference, and then they'll rack up about 5 or 6 conference wins or whatever. So, that's why they're always one of those fringe bowl teams, because they always schedule ridiculously hard non-conference. So it's like you said, you don't really know how good Middle Tennessee is because they've been facing teams that aren't even remotely on the same level as Conference USA opponents. So I don't know what to expect from them. I know almost what I think to expect from Marshall, and that's a pretty rough could be a rough game. I'm not saying they're going to lose, but like I said, historically speaking, they always tend to struggle in Murfreesboro, and this is Middle Tennessee's first game since Tennessee State, where they're relatively on the same level as competition. So we'll see how they respond to that at the home game. So, I mean, it could be a dicey one for Marshall, reeling off a horrible loss. So it's gut check time. Now, I think this is a must win for Marshall in all honesty. I think this is an absolute must win. You cannot start 2-3 and 0-1 in conference. It's just, that's not going to do it. You gotta win this game, in my opinion. It's as big of a must win. It's kind of like that ODU game last year, right after the Middle Tennessee game where Marshall, wet the bed and Alex Thompson didn't look very good in his first start. They were going on the road at ODU, and I dubbed that as a must win. And thankfully, Marshall responded and won impressively. So I think this is a game similar to that. They're going to have to win this game.
It's funny you should say that. I wasn't going to say must win until later when we were doing score predictions, but I actually put that in parentheses to remind myself to say that. And I do think this is a must win. Coming off of, the fan base is, a lot of them anyway, are upset at the fact that they, not so much that the Herd lost, at least from what I'm seeing on social media. It's not so much that they lost, it's that they just got utterly obliterated in all phases of the game at home. And it might have been another animal if that performance would have happened up in Cincinnati, but it didn't. And it's leaving a bad taste in a lot of folks' mouth, and they wonder, wow, how good really are we if a team that we were supposed to be closely rated with just dismantled us in all phases. And I even went back and I had some folks telling me about, you need to go find the play where it was some sort of a fumble or something that Marshall didn't jump on or something, and it ended up being a touchdown for Cincinnati.
Yeah.
And I did. I found that play, and I thought, I don't know what you call that, but it was like, really, that was just kind of a microcosm of the game. He's just like,
exactly,
like, touch the daggone ball down or pick it up or something. Don't just look at it. You know what I mean? So It's just one of those things. It's like, all right, you got to get this stuff straightened out, guys, because this going through the motions type stuff obviously is not going to do it for you. So fortunately, all the goals are on the table still for the Herd. They can still get to 10 wins. They can still win the East. They can still win the conference. They can still go to a good bowl game, and they can still win that bowl game. But the problem is, you've got to do that now in a place that historically you don't play very well, against a team that we really don't know a whole lot about based on who they've played so far, who also happens to feature a quarterback that is their leading passer and rusher. That is not a recipe. If any one of those things kind of we could digest and know a little bit better about, but all three of those things together, I don't have a good feeling about it. I don't think Marshall's necessarily going to go lose either, but I just don't have a good feeling about it. It's like, yeah, Middle could win this game. They could, So let's talk about specifically. What do you think the Herd's got to do to go into Murfreesboro and, get this win? The one thing we do know about Middle Tennessee, Trace, is that you can go into Murfreesboro and you will not be walking into a daunting atmosphere. By and large, they do not pack the house. They do not show out. So, you shouldn't have crowd noise being a factor. We can put that one in the positive column for the Herd. So, what's the Herd got to do to get this dub?
Well, real quick about that point, almost you would rather have crowd noise than have no atmosphere at all, because when there's no atmosphere at all, you kind of have to bring your own energy. So like that could be kind of an issue too, because the marshal might come out kind of lackadaisical, whatever. So that could be an issue potentially, but I don't know. I'm not going to worry about that. But first point I wrote down, I literally wrote down the word offense. Offense. I mean, that's all I put. Any offense will do just fine in this game. More than 14 points in garbage time will do just fine. What else can you say? I mean, when you don't have any success offensively, put it this way, every other game they go out there and look like crap offensively this year. Every other game they've done that. First game they were good, second game they were bad, third game they were good, fourth game they were bad. So I guess by that pattern they're supposed to have a good offensive game, but you got to have offense, got to have some type of success there. 14 points ain't going to cut it. 7 points ain't going to cut it. I mean, good Lord, people. It's not rocket science. Offense has to do something, period, end of story. That's all you can say about that one. Next point is, I wrote down, you got to stop the run. Marshall's had some problems this year stopping the run, and that's been surprising. Ohio gashed them at times. Cincinnati gashed them at times. And like we said, both of those teams have mobile quarterbacks. Middle looks like they have a mobile quarterback too. So they're going to have to stop the run. If you can stop the run, then that forces that quarterback to throw the ball more. And, even though he's had success throwing the ball this year, he's still an unproven quarterback, because they're coming off the heels of Brent Stockstill for the last several years, and he's their all-time best statistical quarterback in program history and everything. So, if they can stop the run like Marshall was great at doing in the last year or plus, even more than 1 year, then they will have a great chance to have success offensively, because you can't. I mean, the last couple games, especially the Cincinnati game, they have been equally shredded through the air and on the ground, I would say. That can't happen. You got to take at least one of them away, and I think taking away the run would be better. And then the next point is, you got to come out of halftime strong. I have a stat here that's pretty mind-blowing. This was from Chuck Landon's column in the paper Sunday after the loss, and he came up with these numbers, and actually it's pretty telling. Over the past 3 games against all FBS competition in the third quarter, Marshall has run a total of 38 plays for a net of 31 yards with 1 first down and 0 points in 3 straight third quarters combined.
That's 45 minutes of real football.
Are you freaking kidding me right now? That's literally less than a yard a play in the third quarter. Yeah. That's unbelievably bad. Like, there is no way you can have success with that little of offensive production in the third quarter. And somebody said it on Twitter, that's just the fact that they're not coming out of halftime strong. That's the lack of adjustments. They're just not coming out strong at all. And that's got to change. Whether or not Marshall's winning at halftime or whether they're down at halftime, they have to come out of the third quarter strong against Middle Tennessee. You cannot have another performance like they've had the last 3 games in the third quarter. It's just not going to work. It can't work, won't work. It just that stat, when I saw that, it blew my mind. The fact that they're literally averaging less than a yard per play in the third quarter against FBS competition this year, that's unbelievable. So
I'm not trying to cut in on you here, but if you found that stat, don't you think that opposing teams found that stat and
guarantee you?
And they're like, wow, okay, so we're down to Marshall at halftime. We have absolutely nothing to worry about because we can come out and run our offense, and they're probably not going to do much here in the third quarter. We can get back into this game. So didn't mean to cut in on you there, but, if it appalls you, that's got to be something that makes opposing teams lick their chops a little bit.
Oh, absolutely. And they take note of all that stuff. They look into the details and everything, and that's going to be on their minds. We can come out of halftime and we can take it to Marshall in the third quarter. So hopefully, but from Marshall's perspective, you got to come out of halftime strong. Period. There's end of story. That's the only way that you can say it. And then my final point is, I think they need a complete special teams performance because that's been iffy this year. A lot of the special teams have been iffy. Kickoff coverage has been terrible. Punt coverage has been terrible. The kickoff returns, they've done nothing. They can't get any kind of positive momentum there. Punt returns really have been non-existent besides Talik Keaton's punt return for a touchdown against VMI. Other than that, they really haven't done anything punt returns either. But Robert Lefevre's been handling his business punting the ball, and there haven't been a whole lot of field goal attempts. So they need a complete special teams performance, starting with kickoff coverage and punt coverage, because it has been bad a lot of times this year. You can't set the teams up and to go to a position every time you kick the ball off. It happened with Cincinnati, the very opening kickoff of the game. They took it all the way to the 40. And then, it was a short drive after that. So you got to get better with that. And I mean, it's not just that. It's going to have to be the complete special teams performance, overall solid performance. I think if they can do that, then they'll have a really good chance to win. But it cannot be like it's been the last few games. Just really weak kickoff coverage and a lot of other stuff. So that can't happen again.
I don't mean to point out the obvious, but I'm going to point out the obvious because you just mentioned some points here and we need offense, we need to play better run defense, and we need better special teams. So it sounds to me like Marshall's not very good in any phase right now, and they just need to be a better team. And it sucks to say that because this team came in with a lot of hype, and right now they're not living up to the hype. Other than, beating down on a really, really bad FCS team and eking by, a historic rival, there's not much there to hang your hat on if you're a Herd fan. And you can't, I would like to think that, even though these players that go out and they work their asses off and they're practicing hard, this is not an indictment of their work ethic or any of that. Sometimes it just doesn't pan out on the field. But at a certain point, you got to make it pan out on the field, right? And if it doesn't, then you're going to be subject to that criticism. And and it's not one of those things I see a lot of times on social media, and it's not necessarily from, Marshall players, so don't think it's that, but it's just athletes in general. You'll see those tweets, and I'm sure you've seen them, where they say they love you one day, they hate you the next day, and then they love you again.
Oh, yeah.
Well, that's sports. Of course. That's sports. You're going to be the hero one day and the GOAT the next day. That's just how it happens. And I don't mean the greatest of all time GOAT. Yeah. I mean, like you're going to be on the short end of the stick some days. And you're going to have to be okay with that. And if you're not okay with that, you need to thicken the skin up a little bit because that's just how sports is. But sometimes the plays and the execution just isn't there, and you kind of you got to work through it. The confidence has to stay high, and you got to work through it. For me, I got 4 points as well. I mean, number one obviously is I wrote down neutralize O'Hara, and you're not going to be able to take him out of a game. He's the freaking quarterback, for crying out loud. So unless you get a wicked lick on him and just literally put him out of the game, that's the only way you're going to neutralize him. So I guess what I should have said was pick your poison with O'Hara. What do you want to do? Do you want him to try to pass it all over the field on you, or are you going to let him get his average of 4.5 yards per carry? And I'm with you. I think you stop the run game and force him to complete 70% of his passes. Because based on these wide receivers' averages, 10.7, 10.8, yeah, that's a first down, but that's telling me that they're not hitting a ton of long passes. So they're hitting intermediate routes that, these receivers might get, a yard or two after the catch and get to that 10 yards. So, yeah, I say stop the run and keep them in third and long and second and long and force them to try to hit those longer passes. That might be the key to victory. Number two, look, point blank, Isaiah Green's got to be more accurate. I mean, that's all there is to it. It's not about, he needs more yards. Yeah, he needs more touchdowns. That stuff comes if he's more accurate. No. I'm not a quarterback guru. I'm not a quarterback coach. I'm not, I can't look at them and break down every single little motion and fix this and fix that. But what I can tell you, and that everybody will tell you that, that sees Isaiah Green play, from time to time, he tends to throw off of that back foot. He tends to just use all arm. There's not a whole lot of getting set and throwing a nice, sharp, crisp pass. He just kind of wants to loft it up there. I get that you're confident in your arm and, you're confident in your ability to just put it somewhere you want it to go, but it's not really been the case as much as you would like to see it this year for Isaiah Green. So he needs to be more accurate. You need to get set in the pocket, man. You need to put some zip on the ball so it goes in a freaking line drive. Less of this, lofting it in there. I mean, there's a time and a place for a touch pass, and it's not every time. I mean, it isn't. Sometimes he'll fling it into a tight window and you're like, see, there it is. You can do that. You got to do that more often, man. Number 3, dude, it's assignment defense. I set it for Western Kentucky against UAB, and they did that, and look at the result. 4 interceptions, +3 in the turnover game, dominating defensive effort against UAB. Tops got the job done. Hurd's going to have to play assignment defense, man, especially against this quarterback. I don't know what the defensive scheme will be. I don't know if they're going to have a spy on him. I don't know if that's the answer, honestly, because I think they tried to do that against Rourke and Ohio, and it didn't work out for them too well. I mean, yeah, they got the win, but, Rourke had a great game. So I'm not sure that a spy is necessarily the way to go. It might be, seeing as this kid is this O'Hara kid is a sophomore. He's really only started this will be his 5th start. So, maybe you can force him into some unnecessary mistakes, whereas a senior quarterback like Nathan Rourke won't make that mistake. Number 4, I always like to get off the cuff a little bit, and I wrote down shake the dark cloud. And I'm hoping that the team themselves don't have this persona like we have this dark cloud over our head. But right now, some of the fans think that there's a little bit of a dark cloud over this team, and they need to shake it off. They need to, get rid of the cloud, let the sun shine back down, and get a little bit of that Herd swagger back, because it's one thing to talk a big game, but if you're not winning, then it's just talk. So shake the dark cloud away, go up to Middle Tennessee, and just handle freaking business, man, and go to 1-0 in the conference and get the ball rolling in the right direction. Everything is still on the table, like I said before, but if you lose this game, there's a lot of fans, just this week alone, there were a lot of fans that are already looking ahead to basketball season. And that's shameful to me. We're 4 weeks into the season. Now, you're a fan, you do what you want to do. You spend your money how you want to spend it, whatever. But, I won't check out on a team for the season after 4 weeks. There's no way. There is no way. I mean, we didn't check out on the Herd in 2016 when it was much, much worse than this. So, everything with every goal still on the table, I don't know why you would walk away from this team, because where are you going to be if they turn it around all of a sudden and run the table through the conference, and you'd be like, see, like, you walked away from that. You just didn't have the patience. So they just need to shake the dark cloud, go up there, handle business, prove to Middle Tennessee that, yep, you are a rebuilding team. You are not where we are at right now. And, we'll see where it goes from there. So how about a 200 proof player this week, Trace?
Yeah, I kind of had to think about it because I wasn't sure really who I was going to pick, because I just picked Xavier Gaines, and he really didn't get any game going last week, which that was a lot of just because Cincinnati's defense was really good and Marshall's offense in part was horrible. But I think a guy that's going to need to have a really good game offensively so I'm going to go with him, is Corey Gamage. Because the receivers lately, there really hasn't been they haven't been really creating much separation at all. Now, Isaiah Green struggled mightily against Cincinnati. Obviously, he really had a poor game, and he was missing a lot of receivers and stuff. But another part in with that is the receivers haven't been creating a lot of separation. They haven't been getting open. They haven't really been giving him a lot of chances to complete passes. Now, a lot of it's his own doing, but a lot of it is, like I said, that point just there. They haven't been able to get open. I mean, if you can't get open, it's kind of hard to catch the ball. So I think Corey Gamage showed out really good in that first game against VMI. He's had moments this year where he's looked really good, like a potential star receiver, but he's also a freshman or whatever, really young, whatever he is, and he's had ups and downs. So he's going to have especially if Obialo is still out, which it looks like he probably will be. My God, I don't know when he's ever going to play. So Gamage is looking like he's going to have to be the guy for the receiving unit. So I don't know. I think he's going to have a big game, going to have to help bail out Isaiah Green a few times. He's going to have a game similar to like he had against VMI. I mean, it wasn't like he necessarily went out there and had 20 catches, but it was a good game where he was able to get deep a few times and, open up the passing game, help open up the passing game. So I think he's going to have to do something similar to that. So I'm going to go with Corey Gamage for the 200 proof player.
I'm going to be honest with you. I don't have one written down because I have no idea who to pick this week. There are so many holes to me right now that need filled on offense and defense based on the matchup. I don't know who to pick. I mean, the easy pick is to say Isaiah Green's got to be the guy because he's got to turn it around and yada, yada, yada. But I don't know that that's it. I think when all else is failing, you rally behind the run game. So I'm thinking it's going to have to be Brendan Knox this week. I think he needs to have a bounce back big game. And, even if they've got to workhorse him to death to get the job done this week, I feel like he's up for it. You know what I mean? I feel like he's the type of guy that's like, yeah, throw it on my back. I'll handle it this week. If he's got to get 20, 25 carries to, bang out 120 yards, so be it. If that gets the job done, then that's what gets the job done. So for me this week, it's got to be Brendan Knox. And we'll see if when the dust settles, the Herd is at least 1 point ahead of the Raiders when it's all said and done. So how about a score prediction, Trace?
Well, that was a nice segue. You said hopefully they're 1 point better. Well, on my prediction, I actually have them 10 points better than Middle Tennessee this week. Okay. So I'm gonna say Marshall wins 31-21. I think they're going to bounce back. I think they're going to respond. I think it's going to be similar to what they did last year. Ironically, after the Middle Tennessee home loss, they responded well, like I mentioned, against ODU on the road. I think they're going to have something similar to that this year. A bad performance at home against Cincinnati, respond next week on the road. I think that's what they'll do. I mean, I think it's not going to be a blowout at all. 10 points is not a blowout by any means. That's a game where Marshall has to – I think it's going to be a game where they have to grind it out and they have to find a way to pull away and, create a little separation. I think it's going to be close the whole way, but I think Marshall's going to get it done. I just can't see them losing and going 2-3. It's not that I can't see it. It's that I don't want to see it, and I don't want to see the fallout if they would go 2-3. I mean, that would be ugly for the fan base. You know how Herd fans get. I mean, Herd fans are kind of the knee-jerk reaction kings of college football, and that would be bad. if after losing about 38 points at home the week before, and then you go on the road in your first conference game and lose to a team that's 1-3, that'd be bad. So I think Marshall gets it done. I don't really care how many points they win by, obviously. I just want them to win because, 1-0 in conference, you got to start out on the right foot, especially with ODU at home after that. That's a winnable game, obviously. So they could be set up for 2-0 start in conference. So this is a big game, must-win game, 100%. So I'm going to say Marshall wins 31-21.
I'm be honest with you. I looked at the daggone season stats and I thought, or the season averages, and I thought that looks like a good score. So I said literally what I wrote down: Marshall 27, Middle Tennessee 21 in the Herd in a must-win game, just like you're saying. I don't want to live in a Twitterverse after a Herd loss this week because I think they might want to. A lot of people will want to start burning some things down. Yeah, and I just don't want to have to see it. To be honest with you, I'd assume them just get this win and go ahead and start prepping for Old Dominion and go on a little bit of a run. I mean, I tweeted it, and the potential is there. We've got to throw in a little bit of a Moonshine Throwdown reference. The potential is there for Western Kentucky to be 4-0 in conference and Marshall to be 3-0 in conference when they meet in Huntington on October 26th. And that will, without question, have an impact on the Conference USA East at that point. That will be a tiebreaker game potentially for, first place in the East. So you said Marshall's got Middle Tennessee and Old Dominion, and then they got to go get past FAU in Boca, which might not be an easy task.
No.
And, Western Kentucky's got Old Dominion. They've just beaten UAB and FIU. They got Army sprinkled in between a couple of conference games. And then they've got Charlotte. So they can totally be 4-0 in conference when the Herd and the Hilltoppers lock horns in Huntington. So, but you can't be 3-0 until you're 1-0 in conference. So better take care of business, Herd. It's time to preview Old Dominion and Western Kentucky. Those Toppers fresh off that big win over UAB, moving them to 2-0 in the conference. And man, isn't their confidence pretty high right now. Unfortunately, Steven can't join us, so I'm going to handle the reins. I still got Trace with me here. We're going to try to get you through as best we can and get you prepped for this Old Dominion matchup with the Tops. Game's going to go down in Norfolk. Toppers 2-0 in Norfolk. Old Dominion on the season right now, not looking very strong. They're only 1-3, Trace. The Power Index really likes the Toppers. 71.1% chance to win on the road. Toppers currently minus 3.5 points. So just like Middle Tennessee and the Herd, home dogs in both games. Gotta like the respect that Western Kentucky is now getting Even though they're just a 2-2 team, it seems to me like it's a completely different 2-2 from Marshall. It just feels that way right now. And I don't really think it has so much to do with the fact that the Tops are 2-0 in conference and in first place in the conference. It just feels like the energy is a different 2-2. Like I said, in Old Dominion 1-3 on the year, their only win is over Norfolk State, and they eked that one out by a field goal. Now, to their credit, they've played a fairly tough out-of-conference schedule. They have losses to Virginia Tech. They have a loss to University of Virginia. And, I mean, East Carolina, they haven't been good for the past 3 or 4 years or so, but, maybe they're trending upward right now. I don't really know that much about East Carolina, admittedly. But, they handed Old Dominion a loss, too. All-time series, I can't remember if I mentioned it's 4-1 in the favor of Western Kentucky. I did say that Tops are 2-0 all-time in Norfolk. Now that one, Trace, that 4-1, the one Old Dominion won last season in 2018 in Bowling Green, Kentucky, in probably the most weird, wild, wacky, drunk Conference USA finish that has ever happened. And not just in this conference, maybe in any conference. But even before that game, these Old Dominion and Western Kentucky games are just always weird. I remember a couple of years ago, there was like game stoppage because of a fight or something like that on the field between these two teams. I mean, when they go at it, they go at it. So there's no reason to think that this game will be any different. But let's relive. Let me just bring you back to speed on how that 2018 game ended, Trace. It was a 37-34 Old Dominion victory, like I said. But here's it was a whole game that happened in the last roughly minute and a half. So the Toppers get a touchdown. Gino Appleberry runs in for a touchdown with 1 minute and 37 seconds left on the clock to give the Tops a 34-27 win. And you're thinking, all right, just get you a stop and be done with it. Old Dominion's not a very potent offense as far as chunk yardage goes. You like your opportunity here. Well, what happens? They go, I won't say right down the field because their drive was pretty sloppy in the beginning, and they even had to face a 4th and 2, but I'll be darned, they pick up a first down with about 30 seconds left. And then all of a sudden, Blake LaRussa goes bonkers, hits a big long pass down the middle. I think it was to like Isaiah Harper or something. He almost breaks a tackle and almost gets into the end zone. But anyway, we'll fast forward a couple of plays. Touchdown pass, a 6-yard touchdown pass to Travis Fulgham with 9 seconds left in the game to tie the game. Okay, so now you're thinking, let's just get to overtime. It's 9 seconds. Just, squib kick it or do something and get to overtime. Well, no. Old Dominion does a little pooch kick, whatever. Toppers field it at the 30. Go down with it. 9 seconds left. Like I said, no time runs off the clock. First play is a handoff to Garland LaFrance. He goes 15 yards to the Topper 45. They call timeout with 2 seconds left. All right. So we're going to run what appears to be the hook and lateral. And it's incomplete. So there you go. You're thinking, well, end of the game, we're going to overtime. But no, wait. Roughing the passer call on Old Dominion, which leads to the first untimed down of this sequence. So the Tops get an untimed down, thinking, all right, let's try it out and try a field goal. What do we got to lose? It's a 57-yard attempt in a very, very stiff wind in Bowling Green that night. And Ranella, God bless his soul, is kicking straight into the wind. So obviously, 57-yarder in its own right, that's a tall ask, but kicking into the wind wasn't going to happen. So it falls short, like 6-7 yards short. So you're thinking, all right, we're still going to overtime. But wait, 12 men on the field for Old Dominion leads to the second untimed down of the sequence. Topper's 5 yards closer now. So Ranella's given another go from 52 yards. But Bobby Wilder's a wild one. He sends a return man back there just in case it's short. And, of course, it's short. So Isaiah Harper, the Old Dominion return man, wide receiver, feels the ball, goes all the way back down into Topper territory and almost breaks it for the touchdown. He's bumped out of bounds somewhere, I don't know, like the 25 or something like that. And you're still thinking, all right, great, game over, we're going to overtime. But wait, face mask on the Toppers leads to one more untimed down for Old Dominion. And what do? They trot out their field goal kicker, and they bust a 26-yard field goal right through the pipes to steal a freaking win in Bowling Green to the tune of 37-34.
Western Kentucky 2018 in a nutshell.
Wow. I mean, wow. You couldn't write that.
No.
You couldn't write that for a movie and have it play out like that. And that was friggin' real ass life. I mean, that was the weirdest sequence ever. So anyway, that notwithstanding, I could not go without talking about that. That was just so weird, wild, and probably never, ever, ever see anything like that again. But to me, Trace, I don't know. I mean, we don't know a whole lot about Old Dominion, you and I, yet. I doubt Steven did as well. He might have done a little bit of research looking in other than their win-loss record and who they've played. We know a little bit about the Toppers. So, what do you think about this trip to Norfolk for the Tops? I mean, this looks on the surface like a more than winnable game based on what we've seen out of Western in conference. So what's it look like to you?
Yeah, I mean, I would consider this a winnable game for sure. I mean, Old Dominion's not very good. They haven't been very good since 2016. That's really the only truly good year they've had since they've joined Conference USA. I mean, to be honest, so they look like they're kind of weak again, and Western's, and I like the point you said about their 2-2 looks a lot different than Marshall's 2-2. The difference is that Western's 2-2 is an overachieving 2-2. Marshall's 2-2 is an underachieving 2-2. I think that's the difference because we know how bad Marshall just looked, and Western's pulled off a couple wins that really a lot of people preseason wouldn't think they would have gotten. But admittingly, FIU has looked like complete fools, pretenders this year. So, but that's still going on the road is a good win. And then UAB, they're not nearly what they were last year, but they're still the defending champions. That's always a good win. So they definitely have some optimism right now at 2-2. And if they can get this win 3-2 and what would that be, 3-0 in conference? That'd be a really, really big start. So, I mean, I'm not saying they're going to sustain that or win the conference or anything, but that's a really good start, and that could really help propel them into bowl eligibility. And in the illustrious words of Doc Holliday, they're on the road, so they have to bring their toughness and their leadership with them on the road.
Well, you would think that goes without saying because
no, it doesn't.
But to me, this is a more and more confident team each week. Despite lose one, win one, lose one, win one is the way the season has gone for the Tops. The confidence has seemed to grow. Of course, to me, I think it hit an all-time low in week 1 after losing to Central Arkansas, and you see a big turnaround. And FIU, you say they might not be a very good team this year, but dude, the Tops were fresh off of a loss to an FCS school at home, and they had to go on the road to a team that was hyped to be a real legit contender, and they went in there and took it to the Panthers, man. I mean, there was no question about it. They took it to them, and that's where you really started to see what this defense could do once they started playing a little bit more focused football. And, the Tops are winning behind this defense, and as long as they get solid defensive performances, they have an opportunity to win and at least be competitive in every single game because new quarterback at the helm, he did just enough to get the win against Old Dominion. I mean, we talked about it. You can't expect to get 4 turnovers in a game and be +3 in the turnover margin and only win a game by 7 points. That can't happen. You're not going to win a lot of games, only being able to put those type of offensive numbers up. But this is an improving team week in and week out, and we'll see how Helton utilizes Ty Story again this week. But to me, to say this game's winnable is accurate, of course, but I think it might be a little bit more than just winnable. I think this is a game that the Toppers should most definitely win. Mm-hmm. It would be an absolute disappointment if they do not win this game. I'm not quite to the point yet to where I think that the Tops could go -2 in the turnover margin and still get a win. But, if they're even in the turnover margin or something like that, I think they could gut out a win. Let me talk about a few players to look out for. Man, this Old Dominion preview and that Middle Tennessee preview that we just did a little bit ago, eerily similar. And it starts and ends again with the quarterback in Norfolk, just like it does in Murfreesboro. Quarterback Stone Smart with 2 T's 6'4", 220-pound junior, 69 out of 109 on the year, 689 yards, just 1 touchdown through the air, 4 interceptions, but he's also the team's leading rusher, just like O'Hara for Middle Tennessee. 63 carries on the season, 163 yards, 5 touchdowns on the ground for Mr. Smart. Now, it's only good for 2.4 yards a carry, but hey, sacks count against that. But 63 carries, Trace, for the quarterback. I mean, that's a big number if you ask me through just 4 games. As far as running backs go, the leading rusher is Lala Davis, the 5'10", 205-pound freshman, just 31 carries on the year, 158 yards, 1 touchdown on the ground. So your daggone quarterback has twice as many rushing attempts as your leading rusher as far as running backs go. Now, look, I'm not sure this Old Dominion team can figure it out right now. I'll be honest with you. The leading receiver, also a running back, but it's a different running back. So, Kashawn Strong, 5'10", 197-pound senior, 15 catches for 105 yards. That's the leading receiver on the team right now. But as far as a wide receiver goes, the one you really need to pay attention to is Eric Kuma. He's been there for a couple years. I mean, he's a senior, the 6'3", 223-pounder. Only 8 catches so far on the year, just 93 yards, no touchdowns, but that's good for 11.8 yards per catch. So, I mean, they've got – I don't know what this says about them, that their quarterback is their leading rusher, one of their running backs is their leading receiver, and their senior wide receiver is only got 8 catches on the year through 4 games. I mean – I don't know if they know who they are, but, still, anytime you're facing a quarterback that's mobile and can seemingly get it done through the air, he might not be finding the end zone, but the completion percentage is fairly high. I mean, you're looking at somewhere around, 60-ish, 65-ish%. I mean, that's pretty legit. So, based on what and I'm not trying to put you on the spot here, but I do need you to help me out. We got to pick up the slack since Steve can't join us this evening. So what do you think these toppers need to do to maybe go into Old Dominion and get a win? I mean, I don't care if you give me the win time of possession or, get to the quarterback. I don't care what you say, but, just from a Herd fan's perspective, because I'm going to give my topper fan perspective as well. So from a Herd fan's perspective, what do you think the Tops got to do to get this dub?
Well, this is going to be a little bit of a joking one,
that's
but
fine.
you got to score more points.
Oh man.
That's insightful. Like, you got to score more points. Like, you have no chance to beat the team if you don't score more points than them. But no, I mean, then to be a little more serious, I mean, you can't, you mentioned it. You don't think that they're in a position now where they can be -2 or minus whatever in the turnover margin and win. They can't be. I mean, I don't care who it is. Like, I don't feel like this Western Kentucky team is strong enough for that. If they're -2 in turnover margin or -3, I think they're going to lose. So they have to at least break even or keep it close in a turnover margin. Like, or of course, plus in the turnover margin would be great. But I mean, you can't always get that every game. So turnover margin would be a big key. The quarterback play is going to be a big key. Obviously now everybody knows about Duncan's out for the year, and now Ty Story's playing and everything, and he had a pretty good first game. I think they're going to have more of the same of that because, I mean, the quarterback is single-handedly can make or break an offense, and, he did a pretty good job last week and helped him get a win over the defending conference champ. So he's going to have to play good again. I don't think there's any doubt about that. Let's see. What other good point could be brought up? Special teams. Special teams got to be sound. Yeah. I don't really know anything about their special teams, but it's got to be sound. So that'll help them get the win, I think. So they got to score more points. They got to have good quarterback play. Special teams got to be good. And then whatever else I said, that's what they got to do to win.
Man, there are a lot of schools out there that might hire you to be a head coach because you sound like you just gave a legit interview.
Yeah.
But no, on a more serious note, look, obviously I tend to pay a little bit more attention to these guys than you do, and that's not a slight to you, but that's just not who you're covering, right?
Right.
So to me, it's not so much of a pick your poison type of thing, but I think with what the effort we saw with this secondary and those linebackers last week against Old Dominion, against UAB, coming down with 4 interceptions. I think the key to the game is to force Stone Smart to pass more than to run, because this defensive line can absolutely get after a quarterback in the pocket. And I'm not so unsure that they can't chase him down if he tries to get out of the pocket. There's a lot of speed there. But I think it plays into the strength of the Western defense if Stone Smart has to pass more than he tries to scramble and run. Because, I mean, his stats tell you he's 1 touchdown to 4 interceptions. I mean, he's going to throw the ball up for you. And we saw last week that these Hilltoppers can go up and get it with, UAB's quarterback could have easily had 6 or 7 interceptions had the Toppers not dropped 2 or 3 of them. And they still came down with 4. So number one, that's the number one point to me. Force Smart to pass more. Number 2, I think you just got to stay hungry. And what I mean by that is if they seize this opportunity, which I think they will, you're looking at 3-0 in the conference this early in the season. Everybody is looking up at you. Right? And as long as you keep winning, they're going to keep looking up at you because no one can catch you right now. So if they stay hungry and take care of business, dude, you're talking about halfway to bowl eligibility. You're talking about a couple of game lead in the conference race, or at least a 1-game lead over maybe somebody. And so stay hungry and just like keep being the man that everybody's got to catch. Number 3, Ty Story, if he takes no unnecessary risks, I think that the Toppers will win this game handily. And what I mean, there's no need to force a ball into double and triple coverage. I mean, you might have all the confidence in the world in your arm, but there's just no need to take that risk, especially if the defense is putting forth any type of effort like you've seen the past few weeks. And number 4, I think they need to get Gage Walker back over 100 yards again, man. He started out of the season. He was gangbusters, kind of falling off the last couple weeks. So, new quarterback. I think it's time to try to get that running back going again. Might see the playbook open up a little bit more since it's not Ty Story's first game as a starter in a Hilltopper uniform anymore. So the comfortability is probably a little bit more present. The jitters are probably gone. He proved he can win with this team. I think we do those 4 things, and I'm serious. I don't think they're going to cruise to like a 4-score win or anything like that, but I don't think, this game will be really in question as much as, if you just glanced at the scoreboard, you might think, wow, that was a pretty tight game. Yeah, I just don't think the game control might not necessarily lead to a bunch of points one way or the other. So, how about from your perspective, who's going to be the 200-proof player this week?
Well, I'm going to go with quarterback Ty Story for that one.
Right.
It's especially when you're on the road, like I feel like bad quarterback play or good quarterback play, either one is enhanced on the road. Especially if you play bad. I mean, if your quarterback is playing bad on the road, your team almost has no shot. I mean, that's just the way it is, especially with a team that's still kind of unproven. I mean, Western's unproven, even though they have got off to a pretty good start. So, they're going to have that stellar quarterback play, and that was one of my points that I said there a minute ago to victory. So, Ty Story, I think he's going to have a big game, definitely bigger than he had last week, especially on the road. And one thing I completely forgot about with Old Dominion is they had a top 25 Virginia team on the road, for a while. I just completely forgot about that game. They were up, I think, 17-0. Or 14-0 in that game. One of those two. Of course, they ended up losing, but by 11, I think. But they really gave Virginia all they could handle, and that was the impressive showing, even though they didn't win. So, I mean, Old Dominion is not very good, but they still have potential. So, it's not a game I would say is, especially with Western, how like I said, unproven they are still. I don't think any game they have to give. And so I think Ty Story's going to have a good game. Yeah,
I mean, Old Dominion is not complete hot garbage. That's not what we're saying. I mean, they're capable of beating. I mean, it's Conference USA. Anybody's basically capable of beating anyone.
Pretty much.
And if you don't play a sound game, you're gonna get beaten. Whoever plays the most sound game, more than likely in our crazy conference, is going to win the game.
Yeah.
But to me, this week's 200-proof player, I mean, this guy is putting on in the early season a conference defensive player of the year campaign. I'm going with D'Angelo Malone. This guy is absolutely wrecking shop in the first month of the season. And I have no indication that's telling me that he's not going to live in the opponent's backfield again this week, that he's not going to be all over Stone Smart this week. I mean, dude, he is having an unbelievable season. And when you talk about pairing him with the other bookend that these tops have, Jawan Jones, these guys are leading the conference in tackles for loss. I mean, this is not a fluky thing. They're legit. And you talk about the other guys in the middle, the Jeremy Darvins and such, who big man came down with an interception last week. I mean, this is just an athletic defensive line, and they're led by D'Angelo Malone. So give me D'Angelo Malone as my 200 proof player this week. I think he's going to get a couple of sacks on Smart, a few more tackles for loss. I mean, he hovers around 8, 9, 10 tackles a game anyway. The dude is just a flat-out playmaker. So until somebody can find an answer to him, he might be my weekly 200 proof player because he is showing no signs of slowing down. So how about a nice score prediction this week, Trace?
Ooh, okay. Well, I've kind of made cases for both teams, low key, like both sides. I've kind of made a case for, but I'm gonna say Western Kentucky wins. I'm gonna say it's a pretty close game. I'm gonna say Western Kentucky wins 24-20 over ODU. I don't know what this situation will be. I don't know if it'll be a game where they have to score late to take the lead. I don't know if it's a game where they're going to have to hold them off. I don't know, but I just think it's going to be a close game. Like you said, most of these Western Kentucky Old Dominion games are pretty wild as it is. So, I mean, that could be another instance coming up this weekend, and I think that's a possibility for sure because both teams are kind of weird teams. I mean, Western Kentucky's definitely showing some promise, but you still can't quite trust them, I would say. Especially, I mean, yeah, they lost at home to an FCS team, but they have rebounded well. But like, they still have a lot to prove. And then Old Dominion, I mean, they've had a lot to prove for about 3 or 4 years. So I'll say, I mean, to be honest, so I'll say Western Kentucky wins 24-20.
I mean, good score prediction. You like a close game. I don't know why I feel the way I do this week, but I feel like this is a bust out game for some reason. I don't know why I feel like that, but I just do. I feel like this is the one where some of those turnovers turn into extra points for some reason. I feel like it's going to be Toppers in a fairly big win, 34-13. Call me crazy. I'm giving them a 21-point win. I just think this offense is going to bust out a little bit this week. Maybe giving it a short field because of the defensive effort. You know, I don't know. It just feels that way to me. I hate to use the term measuring stick game again. It seems like we've done that a lot this season. And this, to me, is not the type of measuring stick to see how good you are, versus who you're playing. To me, this is how much better are we than the team we're getting ready to play. It's that type of measuring stick. So that I'm not directly comparing how good I am. I'm already as good or better than you. I want to see how much better. So I'm just getting the feeling like the Tops are going to go up there and just try to like put a beating on somebody. And with the way that this game went down last year, and how they really just gave that one away you can't even explain it. I just feel like they want to prove a point. And the opportunity to go 3-0 in conference, to stay in first place, the opportunity to beat a team that you should beat in a game that most people preseason might have thought, yeah, Western might be favored against Old Dominion. We really don't know. So now the opportunity's there, and yeah, you're favored. And you keep this up, you might be favored in a couple of weeks. I don't know you'll be favored against Army, but they might be favored against Charlotte, So this is a big momentum game. Keep the ball rolling. Keep the wins coming. Go on a little bit of a back-to-back type thing. I don't know. Give me 34-13, Topper victory, staying in first place. Let's talk about some final thoughts, though, and then we'll get out of here. So, Trace, let's bring you back in here. Give me some final thoughts. Let me fire up the old Cincinnati furnace one more time. And let me get your final thoughts for the week.
Oh, the flames are still hot, so I might as well just roll with it. I was sitting there thinking about it, and this has been an issue for several years now with fans kind of pointing out how Marshall performs against these really, truly good teams. And the more you think about it, the more – now maybe this is just a knee-jerk reaction because they played horrible just recently against a really good team. But if you look at the last few years, Marshall has not been very impressive against these truly legit teams. Now, when I say truly legit, truly good, I don't mean a 7-5 team. I don't mean an 8-5 team. I mean truly good, like 9, 10, 11 plus win teams. Marshall has not had very much success with those in the last few years. And you can make the argument that Marshall's last truly good team that they beat was the 2014 Boca Raton Bowl against Northern Illinois. That was an 11-3 team that won the MAC, and Marshall beat the brakes off of them by about almost 30 points. So you can make the argument that was Marshall's last truly good win. Now, I mean, they've beaten some teams with winning records and stuff since then. Like they beat Southern Miss in 2015, who won 9 games. They beat FIU last year, who won 9 games. They beat Louisiana Tech in the Conference USA title game in 2014. They had 9 wins. But those teams, I don't consider those teams truly legit. Like, they were good teams. But, like, I'm talking truly legit team that it can be viewed as a great team or just a great win, period, because there's been some issues with that. I mean, you can't really deny that they kind of struggle when they play these teams like this. I mean, the Boise State game, they could have won the game, but they lost. The Cincinnati game, they had no chance. After the game got going, there was no chance at all. So, I mean, it's just not really a good sign, and that's just not – the fans are going to get on Doc for that. And that's one of the many things that people are bringing up right now is the fact that Marshall struggled with these good teams. So it's not very impressive at all. So they really need, and like every program gets a signature win. Like, I mean, ODU beat freaking Virginia Tech last year when they were in the top 25 at the time. Every team, for the most part, gets a signature win. I don't know if Marshall has a signature win over the last several years. I mean, I don't consider that they do. I mean, yeah, they won a conference title 5 years ago, but I mean, that's not really a signature win. That's just a conference title. That's not like they're beating a top 15 team or anything. So, I mean, they need to really get on that. I mean, it leaves a bad taste in everyone's mouth. So, when they get these opportunities to play these really good teams, they can't keep coming up short, and they can't keep laying eggs like they did against Cincinnati. So there's a lot riding on those games. So we'll see how it goes in the future. And this year, I mean, they got to get on that because fans are going to see through the BS, because like you going out there and beating 4-win ODU or 5-win Charlotte or 6-win Middle Tennessee, that's not impressing anybody. So fans are going to start seeing through that, and it's already started.
Well, if your conference, by and large, is viewed as one of the weakest in college football, and you don't dominate it, then what does that say about you as a team? You
right.
Can't be that strong. And I like to continue to use Appalachian State as a reference in the G5 because they were a dominant FCS team that made the transition. And yes, they play in a fairly weak Sunbelt team, but there are a lot of Sunbelt teams that would beat a lot of Conference USA teams.
Oh,
and
yeah.
Appalachian State continues to get those Power 5 wins. They're fresh off of a win over North Carolina a couple weeks ago. And North Carolina just loses to Clemson by a point where they basically, that one slipped away from Carolina. So they could have beat Clemson today. But that's not like one win every 5 years that Appy gets. They're getting these wins against Power 5 schools fairly regularly. So you're right. If you're going to continue to schedule these teams and you want to say, hey, we're getting home and homes with the NC States and the Virginia Techs and this, but you can't even be competitive in those games. You can't win those games. Then why get them? Why do you want to? I mean, yeah, it's great. At that point, what's your fan base coming to see who you're playing that week? That's not what it's all about.
That's exactly what they're doing.
That's not what it's all about. You should come to see your team, and they want to come and see their team when their team is good. So work on your in-house product before let's bring Bama to the house, or let's go down for a one and done. Nah, man, you don't need to get blown out by 60. 38 at the hands of Cincinnati is bad enough at home. So I feel what you're saying. Steve, how about some final thoughts this week?
Yeah, just still riding this high victory. Got a little buzz going. I'm sure as the season progresses, there will be a sobering moment where we lose to somebody unexpectedly. Hopefully not next week. The old saying, you're never as good as what you think you are. You're never as bad as what you think you are. Hopefully we've seen the worst in the UCA loss. But hopefully there's still better to be seen. And I think some of the opponents coming up kind of open that door to possibly having some better offensive performances with ODU, Charlotte coming up. Of course, Army right in the middle of those. So then leading into the Moonshine Throwdown, which could just really be a big game for kind of the East standings at that point, turned into the second half of the season. So, really excited for what we saw. I think Ty Story is going to be solid to end the season, right here at the middle of the season. Kind of a good time to take over. Really seemed to settle in the second half. And defensively, those boys just got to keep doing what they do. I mean, keep pressure on the back end, staying disciplined, staying home, keeping the big plays in front of them. All the UAB guys I talked to, that was kind of my number one worry was with a mobile quarterback and a good running back in Spencer Brown that we would get too close to the line and get burned over the top, but we stayed home and didn't allow that to happen. Then lastly, got to give a shout out to the G5 Beat. Met him at the game, talked to him for a few minutes, got some cooler stickers from him. So cool guy, nice meeting him. Always enjoy meeting some Conference USA friends and G5 friends that actually travel to a conference away game. So shout out to G5 Beat.
Shade.
Yeah, good game. Love that victory and throw a little sprinkle of shade on top of that.
Get out of here. Get out of here.
Look, Old Dominion is not that much of a measuring stick game. UAB was a pretty decent measuring stick game for Western, and they proved at this point in the season that they're better than UAB. So the next measuring stick game may actually be Army. Army's a pretty good team, and if you happen to lose that game, it doesn't affect anything. But that's a good, that's a pretty good time to have a game like that in between, breaking up your conference schedule there a little bit. So, excellent win today. I mean, anytime you get a win, it's great. But, hey, man, knocking off the defending conference champion, that's a pretty big deal. I heard at the end of the broadcast that UAB hadn't lost a game in 308 days, and the Toppers brought that to a screeching halt this evening in Bowling Green, Kentucky. So congratulations to every single Hilltopper that was in attendance for that game. 20,304, not a terrible crowd considering. Wish it would have been a little bit better. I mean, hopefully when Army comes to town, you'll push closer to 22K, maybe even get you a little bit of a sellout. So momentum's starting to build there in Bowling Green. It's something you might want to be a part of if you're not going to these games. So Herd fans, move past this one. Take a swig of something strong and rinse the sour taste out of your mouth from the Cincinnati loss. Clean off the palate, because in a couple weeks we're going to be sipping moonshine. But until then, don't look past Middle Tennessee. So until next week, Steve, take us out.
Go Tops.
Trace.
Go Herd.
We will see you next week. That's the Moonshine Throwdown podcast. Later.